Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the Mom on the Verge podcast, where I aim to help you improve your sense of joy, purpose, and meaning in this life. We will talk about a lot of different ways we can do this, but ultimately, we'll be working toward finding our way back home to ourselves and remembering that even in the most challenging times, peace is only a breath away. I am your host, Katie Farinas, a mom, nurse, and yogi on a mission to improve mental health and build community in our world. Hello, friends. This week I have Dr. Kirsten Lawrenson. She began her career actually as a chiropractor, but then became very interested in functional medicine. So she became a functional medicine provider who began working primarily with athletes, a lot of women, but women athletes. But once she became a mother herself, she really recognized what a powerful transition that is in a woman's life, and has pivoted and started really working primarily with mothers in the role of motherhood and how that impacts our body, like the health of our body, our minds, and the health of our minds and our souls, and how really those three things are not separate. They are one, and what impacts one impacts the other, and so on and so forth. So she is really passionate about that mind, body, soul connection, and how we can heal ourselves on a physical level when we heal ourselves on a mind level and on a soul level. So we talked about a lot of different things related to motherhood and how motherhood really changes us. And how, as a society, we don't really emphasize that, and we don't really acknowledge it, because motherhood seems to be something that so many people do. It seems to be so common, and it is so common. But just because it's common doesn't mean that it's not extraordinary, and that it's not sacred, and that there aren't seismic shifts that happen inside a woman when she becomes a mother. And if we don't take the time to recognize those and acknowledge them and work through them, we can experience a lot of different issues like health problems, physical health problems, mental health problems. And we can't grow and expand in the way that we're intended to do through this process, because we aren't aware of where we need to do some work that will allow us to grow and expand in really beautiful ways. And I really like the way Kirsten throughout the interview kind of reframed common things that we complain about in motherhood, and helped me to see it in a more positive way. Like, for instance, she talked about how our brains literally rewire when we're pregnant. Like, they physiologically change when we're pregnant, so that we are prepared to care for this, newborn baby who is completely dependent upon us. And, as a woman who has gone through pregnancy, and I work with women who are pregnant all the time, and of course I care for women who are pregnant, we always talk about placenta brain, how we get forgetful, and we talk about these different things that happen to us, these different symptoms, so to speak, of becoming pregnant and becoming a mom. And we usually talk about them in not a positive light. I mean, we're frustrated because we can't remember all the things that we used to remember. We're getting stressed more easily, or we're more sensitive to sound, or whatever the case may be. We find these things to be annoyances, which is understandable, of course. But it also can be flipped, and we can like see it as the miracle that it is. Like, yes, maybe we don't have quite the same memory that we had prior to pregnancy and to, being a mother, but our brains literally rewired to care for this human being. So that's pretty magical, actually, if you think about it that way. And Kirsten did that on many different times, where she took something that, we may experience and perceive it as something negative. But if we really stop to think about what's happening inside of us, it's actually magical and a miracle and amazing. So I think you're going to really enjoy this episode. If you have any interest in working with Kirsten, I will put her information in the show notes, and you can reach out to her. And I didn't have enough time to talk to her. She mentioned, migraine, and I would love to have chatted with her, because actually my migraine began after the birth of my first child, but then remained stable until directly after the birth of my second child. So definitely pregnancy related, and I haven't been able to figure out how those two things connect yet. But if you have any symptoms that started after pregnancy or during pregnancy, and you haven't been able to identify what's going on, Kirsten might be a good person to talk to. All right, have a good listen. Talk to you at the end. All right, welcome to the show, everybody. This is Dr. Kirsten Lawrenson, and she is going to speak to us today about a lot of different topics, but starting with how pregnancy and labor really impact us a lot further down the line than a lot of us think they impact us. So tell us like a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then we can start on that topic about, how those things really change, not only during that period, but after that, much farther after that period as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation today. I'm like so passionate about it. So it's always an honor to get to share what is on my mind. So my name is Dr. Kirsten Lauritsen, and I am a functional medicine practitioner. I also have my doctorate in chiropractic. My journey sort of took me through a whole health journey of endometriosis and migraines and all that stuff. And
oh, girl, we're gonna have to talk about that. I'm a chronic migraine sufferer, so we'll circle back to that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I realized after a while that like what I was doing was not working for me anymore. It really wasn't solving the problem, and things were getting worse. So it led me on my own journey of becoming a doctor, and then in chiropractic, I will say that. But then that led to looking into functional medicine, incorporating that into my practice. And then that further led me into really looking at how our subconscious mind is also interacting with all like the physical body stuff as well. So mindset, the things that we think, the way that our emotions, all of these are contributing to the stuff that's going on in our physical body. So that's the journey that I've been on. And then I became a mom, and I realized how much all of it connects, and all of it is just so important inside of motherhood. And now I'm just really listening to other women throughout the time of my practice. I worked a lot with women and also moms. So it's not just now, but it's a collection of a lot of experience and time of working with women and realizing how much all of this is connected. And I think as women, we deserve to have healthcare that takes account for all of the different roles that we play, who we are, all of our intricacies. And I really want to help. I am here to help women to really explore all of those different areas and be able to thrive inside of their health and in their life. It's not, it's all there. I think as parents, we get wrapped up in the stress and the doing, and also the like all of the to-do list things that we've got to get done. And it's busy. We play a lot of roles. We have a lot of contributions to the household. And how can we also take a little minute to maybe a larger minute to also, really get to know ourselves a little bit more, get to experience joy, get to be ourselves inside of that role, and maybe come at this from a bit more overflow than like at not enough in capacity. So
yes, I love that. So what I'm hearing you talk about really is like the mind, body, soul connection, which is really like encompasses all of who we are, mind, body, and soul, which that last piece really is not talked about enough, in my opinion. And it is who we are, right? The mind and the body are just like, they're just like the three-dimensional version, that's put out into the world, but the soul is really who we are. So you're talking about that connection, and you're talking about the sacredness of motherhood, which is something that, motherhood is so common. Most women statistically speaking, eventually become mothers. So sometimes when something is so common, I think we don't always recognize it for how special it is, because it doesn't necessarily feel special in the sense that it is uncommon, but it is still incredibly special and sacred. And when we come to it with that viewpoint in mind, it takes on a whole different meaning to us, and we can operate with inside that container in a different way. So I love that. I love that. And also, I don't know if you knew this, we didn't talk about this before we started, but I'm a labor and delivery nurse and have been for almost 20 years. So,
Oh,
um,
lovely.
so, I love supporting women on their journey, but I can tell you in the traditional medical system, I see that there is so much that we just can't help women with because there's just not enough knowledge, there's not enough research, it's not that practitioners don't want to help their patients. They're using all the tools that they have in their toolkit to do their best for their patients. But sometimes, and I would say it's not uncommon, that there's not enough tools.
Yeah.
Because it's incorporating mostly just the body, a little bit of the mind, and not a lot of the soul at all.
Mhm.
And so I love what you're doing here because it's really bringing all those three things together.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
excited.
So tell us about what happens. You get pregnant, like just physiologically, what you get pregnant, you go through labor, like what's happening in our bodies that we might not be aware of.
Okay. So I think, yeah, so all sorts of things, right? I mean, not only are we changing as far as like our hormones are, and many women are usually aware, like, yes, my hormones are changing as far as
Right.
all of that goes, right?
Yes.
However, other things that are also going on there too is it's called matrescence, where our brain is literally rewiring. It's one of the coolest things neuroscience wise. I'm a neuroscience junkie, so I like love to learn all about the brain. But
Same here.
it's basically rewiring in order to make sure that we are able to take care of that kiddo, right? I mean, there's so many different things, but we're very connected to our kids. And the reason for that is because we are designed to do that. We are their sole well, I mean, usually we have partners or spouses, but we
Right.
are there to make sure that that kid lives.
Hmm.
So it's,
Right.
yes, as much as it is a very logical thing, it is also a very physiological thing that does happen. And that's the reason why uh, women can like look back and say, yeah, I became kind of a different person inside of motherhood because you did.
Right. That is not imagined.
No,
Yeah.
like you did.
Yeah.
That's what motherhood is supposed to be. But it's also often too why sometimes women will look back and say, gosh, sometimes I just wish I could go back to
Mhm.
before motherhood because things were simpler, or gosh, that this is where I felt the best. This is where my
Mhm.
health felt the best. This is where I knew who I was. I was in
Yeah.
such a groove at that time, and then everything got turned upside down, and I don't know if we always are anticipate how much change will happen inside of motherhood because, as you
Mhm.
mentioned at the beginning, like it's just so common. So
Right.
many people become moms, but we don't speak to the changes that often happen that I think catch a lot of women off guard as far as like,
Mhm.
gosh, I didn't realize how much would change.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going to change. We can't control it for any of that. So,
Right.
while I am and have created resources for women to be able to prepare a bit more,
Mhm.
this is also where, finding support and things like that can be just so critical
Yeah.
because doing it all on our own sometimes is just it's a longer journey and a harder journey.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a lot of things that change inside of pregnancy, then with labor in and of itself, and also on top of that too, pregnancy wise, our GI tract microbiome changes. It shifts
Mhm.
so that we can be able to gain a little bit of weight, right? To be able to support that pregnancy. Different types of bacteria literally get higher and others get lower so that we can take on a few more calories from the food
Mhm.
that we eat,
Mhm.
that then allows us to gain weight, which is
Yeah.
important to sustain that pregnancy and also the breastfeeding phase afterwards as well. So we
Mhm.
see so many different physiological changes, not to mention the blood, our blood volume increases, right? So
Mhm.
physiologically.
Yeah.
So much changes. Then we go through labor, and that has its own changes that happen there too, right? We not only is it physiologically a strenuous activity, but
Mhm.
also we are like experiencing an expansion. And
Mhm.
on a soul level, we are opening up a portal for a life to come through, which is just so big. Like, I don't
Yes.
know other
Yeah.
words to explain it.
Yes.
It is a huge thing that happens. And even then, like, I think that can catch a lot of women off guard. I know for me, I thought like, oh, I'm gonna have all of these like just happy hormones, and I'm gonna be so in love with
Yeah.
this kiddo, and it's just gonna be
Yeah.
so amazing.
Yeah.
And then I had a very traumatic experience of, yeah, I ended up with a C-section, and it was a whole thing. I don't really want to go into that. I can, but I don't want to go into it too much for
Yeah.
any moms who are out there that are, maybe
Right.
pregnant.
Right. Right.
But at the same time, it took me a little bit to
Mhm.
connect, and it took me a little bit of time to just really feel that love it's not that I didn't, right? But I want to speak to that because I think
Yeah.
I didn't recognize that can
Mhm.
be a reality until later when I said what I
Yeah.
was experiencing, and women were like, "Oh yeah, it took me a little bit of time." And I was like, "Well, why didn't you say so?
Yeah.
I thought something was wrong with me, you know?"
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so there's so many changes that then happen there, and not to mention all of the hormones afterwards. It's such a fast time that our hormones immediately shift. There's no other time in our womanhood that our hormones ever shift that quickly. And then they can continue to be quite a roller coaster for an entire year after
Mm.
birth, if not a little bit longer,
Yeah.
so especially if we're breastfeeding.
Mhm.
So there's that, and that includes the thyroid, that includes estrogen, that includes progesterone, all of these different types of hormones that are doing all sorts of different things. And then we layer on the expectations, the stress,
Mhm.
the obligations, well, I thought I was going to lose the baby weight. I thought I was going to shift back to who I was beforehand. I thought I was going to, be able to manage all of these things and go back to work and do all of this. And now I just realized, like, holy smokes, this is a whole different experience than what I thought
Yeah.
it was going to be. And I don't
Yeah.
want to go back to work now. I don't want to, do all these other things. I mean, that's life and world changing when you went into something thinking one way and then realizing like I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah.
That is, and
Mhm.
then of course we have all the conversations we have to have of like the expectations from spouses of like, well, I thought you were going to go back to work. I thought you were
Mhm.
going to, do these things. And now realizing like, how do you explain to someone like, I'm not that, I've changed.
Right.
It's
Right.
hard.
Yes. Yes, it's hard because it's a very rapid change. Just as you said about the hormones, there's no other time in your life where your hormones shift so rapidly. I feel like there's really no other time in life outside of maybe experiencing a traumatic event that you change
Yeah.
so rapidly.
Yes.
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 Usually it changes kind of slow and gradual, but
Yep.
it's not when you enter into motherhood. It is a really
Yeah.
some walls get knocked down, some things get blown up. You don't really know what happened. You're a little confused.
Yeah.
And yeah, you just feel like a different person. And
Mhm.
I actually just did a whole episode on grief, and many kinds of grief, but I think there's a lot of grief associated with that change. When you're talking about the people who are like, I just want to go back, I want to feel like the way I did before. That's a sense of grief and loss for the person that you were before you became this new person. And that's something we don't talk a lot about in at all.
No, and it's actually something I've included in a lot of my courses for moms, just because I took the opportunity because I was working with coaches who were kind of leading me through the journey of like what I was experiencing. But one of the things we talked a lot about was grieving who I was. And so I took the opportunity inside of pregnancy to just do the things I wanted to do, to like rest, to just get to like float in the pool for a bit and just really take the opportunity to take a step back and just experience life the way it was,
Mhm.
and take the time to grieve the things that I knew it wasn't going to be this way ever again.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
man, if you don't take I've seen this. Like if you don't take the time then, oftentimes it comes up later on and it will kind of
Yeah.
force you to take that time to grieve that old life.
Hmm.
And that way, but this is the best part, is that when we're able to grieve and we allow for ourselves to push past that resistance, it then clears that space for the new to come in. And
Hmm.
then that's when we get to experience a whole new level of who we are and a whole new experience of life in a way that we've not necessarily seen before. So it's,
Yeah.
while I think it can feel really uncomfortable to deal with those emotions and to deal with those really hard things, if
Hmm.
we reframe it in a way of like, well, when we create more space, like if we do in our house, like we clear out all the like old stuff, and it feels
Right.
so good to finally like see that stuff move on to
Hmm.
something or somebody else. It also creates new space for new things to come in. And it's just
Right.
such a great energy flow, I think. But
Yeah.
it happens inside of our emotions too, and it
Yeah.
happens inside of motherhood.
Yeah. And it really does. And I think, I teach yoga and meditation and breath work and
Mm,
things like that. And I always, talk before I do a meditation, I do a little talk, or if I'm at an event, and I always say, like, I can tell you this, and it helps to kind of frame it out for you a little bit, but it's an experiential process.
yes.
So you can't understand what it feels like to be in deep meditation or to feel that sense of deep relaxation or connection to the universe without experiencing it. I can't tell you. And so it's the same with motherhood. We can beforehand, and I wish I had, because I was like, oh, I'm just gonna have this baby and I'm just gonna go back to my life. Like, I mean, of course, there's gonna be
Yep.
the baby and I'm gonna need to take care of the baby, but I was fully and wholly unprepared for the seismic shift that occurred
Yeah.
after having a baby, and then felt that there was something wrong with me because I also took some time that I always felt very like I needed to care for my baby. Like I felt very strongly to protect her
Yep.
and feed her and make sure that she was safe and warm and fed and blah, blah, blah. But that like warm, fuzzy feeling didn't come for a while. And then feeling a lot of guilt about that. So,
Yep.
it's even if so I was completely unprepared. Now, like what you're saying, I think is a fantastic idea for mothers to kind of recognize this, that this is going to happen, kind of maybe grieve it a little bit before it even does
Yeah.
happen. Recognize that although, yes, this is a loss in a sense that you are grieving, there's this other bigger thing that's coming, and that's just like the next step on your journey, and it's okay. But until you actually experience it, it's hard to truly understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And shifting a little bit too, maybe even into some of the health things that can come up with this as well. I think part of becoming a mom is opening up to receive.
Hmm.
And sometimes, and just as you were just explaining here too, like you think you're going to be going back, you think you're going to be going back to that old time. The I think the blessing in all of it is that when we actually open up to the change and we stop resisting the change,
Hmm.
it allows us to receive this new thing. And inside of motherhood, so many seasons change, right? Like we've got to be
Hmm.
able to adapt, we've got to be able to flow. We've got, because kids are in a constant state of change, which
Yes.
means that we're going to be in a constant
Constant.
state of
Yes.
change.
Yes. And change is uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
so uncomfortable. So, and even in those, and you even spoke to this a little bit of like when kids are growing up, we're changing and growing along with them. So
Mhm.
being able to actually take that time to grieve the things that we're letting go of, to grieve the things that we're, now shifting into a new phase, to
Yeah.
maybe see the resistance as places where we can maybe dig or learn a little bit more about who we are, but not
Right.
necessarily stay stuck in one place, because that can just create all sorts of difficulties and challenges of flow in an already challenging and difficult time.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's also where the body physical chronic stuff can start to come in, of the stress being super high, being super fatigued, having low energy, sleep imbalances, mood and anxiety issues, GI like bloating and all of that. Like from a physical standpoint, when we kind of feel resistant and stuck in something, some of these chronic conditions can be around for decades,
Yeah.
of not being able to find resources or ways to get through them. Oftentimes too, that's reflected somewhere in the subconscious mind of being like, you need to learn, you need to move past whatever this is that we're wanting you to learn.
Yeah.
And looking at motherhood sometimes is one way to kind of get some data as far as like, where am I feeling stuck? Where am
Yeah.
I creating a bit of this in my life so that I can learn what I need to learn so I can then move and open up to receive what I want and then move into that next
Yeah.
expansive state or stage of where I'm headed.
Yeah, I love that. And as you're talking, I'm kind of creating a visual in my head because you talked about how, when during birth it's like a portal opens
Yeah.
up, right? But I feel like the portal is the perfect size for having a newborn baby. But as you grow or they grow, that portal wants to keep opening and expanding and getting larger and larger. And that's how we receive, right? Because we have this stuff that's trying to come through this portal. But if we are resisting our portal opening, then there's a jamming. There's a jamming of what's trying to energetically come through that, you're
Mhm.
trying to like put a fire hose worth of spiritual energy into a pinhole. It just can't,
Yeah.
just can't get through. So we have to drop that resistance, which can be really hard, really hard.
So hard.
Yeah.
So hard. Coming
Yeah.
from someone too who had like I mentioned this in the beginning, I had endometriosis, which in and of itself is can have a lot of dissociation with it, just
Mhm.
because the body's painful. So it's common for also there to be some sort of like life experience of wanting to dissociate. I
Mhm.
was one of those people who was like,
Okay.
I don't touch emotions. Like
Right.
that's not what I do. I try to keep those at bay. Like, how
Right.
can we
Right.
just think our way around those and not face them?
Yeah.
So I had a lot of resistance in my own life, but that was the very critical key that helped me heal. So I'm
Okay.
pretty passionate about that.
So do you help your patients with that too? Is that what
Yeah.
part of what you do? Okay.
Yeah.
So
So
how
yeah,
do
go ahead.
patients come to you? Like how do they first, come into your office and then where do you take them on that
Yeah.
journey?
So if they're in Oregon State, then according to like my license, I can work with them from a functional medicine perspective. So they come usually with, I have something like a lot of gut bloating, or I have it's very clear that my hormones are not okay. Everybody keeps telling me I'm okay, but I am not okay.
Mhm.
The labs are all reflecting normal, but that doesn't make any sense because all of these symptoms are happening and this is not normal for me.
Mhm.
Could be like, again, the sort of like weight gain that can sort of happen when we have hormone or thyroid imbalances, energy issues, waking up in the middle of the night, potentially multiple times, or not feeling rested at the, beginning of the day, not being able to fall asleep because the brain is just so active,
Mhm.
um, anxiety, overwhelm, burnout. I
Mhm.
mean, gosh, we can, and any sort of gut stuff, IBS, IBD, any of those types of things. Functional medicine tends to have a range that we see.
Mhm.
Um, but a lot of it just comes down to looking at each system. How is the heart cardiovascular system doing? How is the liver doing in processing? Does it have enough nutrients in order to get those toxins and daily things that we are exposed to out?
Mhm.
Do we have
Mhm.
open detoxification pathways? Are we bringing in vitamins, minerals, proteins, carbs well, or do we
Mhm.
have some deficiencies that are then potentially, leading to some hormone imbalances? Are we activating and spiking our blood sugar all day long, which are also contributing to hormone imbalances? Do we have
Mhm.
brain fog? Are our mitochondria, those powerhouse energy systems inside of our cells, do they have what they need, the antioxidants to do their job? Functional medicine in and of itself is just looking at that whole system, the whole
Mhm.
body, and also with emotions, also with mental stress and the
Mhm.
spiritual side, taking a look at the body from a very, very holistic perspective.
Mhm.
And what I do is I look at all of that physical stuff as far as how can we support the body that way: nutrition, exercise, lifestyle, sleep, all of that, plus
Mhm.
supplements where needed. And then how can we also combine that subconscious side of what else is going on in the mind, the emotions, the spiritual
Mhm.
side that are contributing
Hmm.
to that the physical functional side as well, looking at all of those bodies, establishing balance inside of all of them.
Yeah.
For my moms and women who are out of state, I can pretty much only talk to like nutrition, sort of like health coaching ways. And I just dive fully into that subconscious piece. So
Okay.
looking at what's going on in the subconscious mind that's creating and contributing to anything that's going on in their life, but also in their health as well.
Okay. That is fascinating. And, there's such an interplay. So what you're saying is that things that are going on at the subconscious level or at the emotional level could actually be creating physiological changes
Yeah.
in their body that is creating health issues.
Yeah, I have a great example
Yeah.
of that. So
Okay.
if anyone out there listening right now thinks of a time where they were like really nervous, or like let's picture, a lot of people know like going on stage or going up in front of a cup of somebody or a group of people and feeling really really nervous. Oftentimes we have that like immediate response of either like sweating, or we start realizing like I got to go to the bathroom, whether that's number one or number
Right.
two.
Right.
But like,
Yeah.
you get those physiological changes that are very evident. Is some people, their just gut starts moving really, really quickly. Like they got to just empty everything out.
Right.
That is the physical body responding to an emotional state that's going on in the mind, in the brain.
Yeah.
Your neurotransmitters, your hormones are felt by every single cell. So your whole body is responding to that physiological state. But
Mhm.
then when we think of maybe a time when we're really happy, and this is also where it comes in, this with like meditation and yoga, when we get into those states where we can be calm, where we can be rested, where we can express or feel love or joy
Mhm.
or connection or happiness, all of those states are also going to then be felt inside of the whole body as well, which
Yeah.
is why people can often go from feeling just so strung out and tired and exhausted, and then going through a meditation or yoga and movement to move a lot of those things out of the body, and
Mhm.
then coming out of all of that feeling so rested and feeling so rejuvenated. It's a
Mhm.
physiological change, but
Right.
we're not changing anything really specific in the body. We're
Yeah.
changing what's going on in the mind.
Right.
So if we have
Yeah.
trauma from labor, birth, that we've never processed, if we feel
Mm.
like we've stored beliefs like my body betrayed me, like my body didn't do what it was supposed to do, very common with C-sections because
Mhm.
you didn't go through the fit like the normal vaginal birth
Right.
stage,
Mhm.
um, which is not, these are all beliefs that people that can be stored and created,
Yeah.
and then they can lead down the line to like not feeling enough or not feeling like we are worthy of whatever we want to create. We can often see any of these beliefs can then basically create what's going on inside of the physical body. So
Yeah.
this is how the mind, this is how what's going on in our brain can significantly impact what's going on in our physical body.
Yeah. And another really great example, and it's funny because I use this for meditation as well, as visualization is a type of meditation. And I talk about how powerful our thoughts are, and our thoughts
Yeah.
really are, they're more powerful than really I think any of us can truly understand at this point. But a very simple example is if you think about, you just take a moment, close your eyes and think about eating like your favorite meal, right? You can really visualize it. Maybe it's a burger, juicy burger, it's dripping with the grease. It's, the soft bun, you got this crispy fries next to it. Your mouth will start to salivate, right? Your stomach will start to rumble. Like your body will respond as if you are literally eating that burger.
Mhm.
And that's just one tiny little example of how powerfully our minds impact our bodies. But what about when you're talking about the subconscious beliefs? Like how do you help women get to those, right? Because we can train to, become more aware of our thoughts, but what about those patterns that are, churning inside of us underneath the surface that we may not be aware of?
Yeah. So ways that people can do this on their own is journaling is a really great way to get started. And I usually start with taking just an inventory of what are the things that you're feeling or what are you thinking throughout the day. Just taking a step back and sort of auditing, like,
Yeah.
how am I going throughout my day, and
Yeah.
taking a more of a curious standpoint than a judgmental one, of just,
Hmm.
I'm just curious. So when I go to drop my kids off, when I hear the baby start to wake up, when I need to go and make dinner, when I need to do all of these things, what are the thoughts that are coming to mind? Do I get to the stage of like, gosh, I have to go take the kids to do their things, or gosh, I'm getting really frustrated because I want to finish this one last thing before the baby's, but now she's
Hmm.
waking up. So now
Hmm.
and then
Right.
do I not want to make dinner? Am I really, fighting doing that? Inventory, getting
Hmm.
data. How am I flowing throughout my day? Am I thinking a lot of negative things? When I look in the mirror, am I saying negative things to myself? Do I
Yeah.
not like the way I look? Again, no judgment, just curiosity.
Hmm.
Because when
Hmm.
you start to take inventory, now you're going to start seeing, okay, well, maybe this is why this is the way, like, this is how I feel about my life and about my day, is because that's literally how I'm thinking.
Hmm.
So that's one way.
Okay.
Another way is to journal. We can start saying, like, okay, today, my kiddo was just having a really tough day. And from 6 to 8 p.m., it was just wild, just crying,
Right.
screaming, all
Yeah.
of these things. Um, and then I just want to just dump the bucket of all of the things of how I feel about it, what I'm
Hmm.
thinking, all of it. And so you
Yeah.
just dump the bucket, just journal every single thing, thought, feeling, anything that's coming up. And then what you can do is look back on it and see, are there areas where I'm saying things like, I am blank, like I am not good enough, or I feel guilty because I don't know how to parent a kid through this.
Mm.
I don't feel supported. I'm not supported, or I'm not safe to express how I'm feeling in this scenario.
Yeah.
These are beliefs that are going on in the subconscious mind that you're operating from. So your
Yeah.
thoughts and your feelings, your emotions, your actions are all going to be dictated by those beliefs that we've
Hmm.
created. And like, we create these like a long time ago
Hmm.
from our kid, like from when we were kids. 0 to 8 years old is when we develop most of our belief systems.
Hmm.
So what I do as a coach is I am looking, and as for some people, their physician, I'm looking for those things when we're talking about what's going on in their life, when we're talking about what's going on in their health. How are they viewing what's going on? I am literally listening for all of these pieces, because
Yeah.
then we can go to those points and we can start
Right.
learning what we need to learn, reframing what was going on there. And then now the brain can operate off of a different belief, off of a
Yeah.
different filter system. And that's
Hmm.
when life starts to change. That's when we stop approaching motherhood from a place of not enough, of
Yeah.
guilt, of just at capacity, of burnout and overwhelm. We get to start shifting into more of a place of having more than enough, having
Yeah.
overflow, being able to have that regulated nervous system that is not in fight or
Hmm.
flight anymore, that's more in that rested, digested, and healing state. And the way that we show up in our life literally shifts and
Yeah.
changes.
It does. It does. And I can tell you from personal experience, like, believe me, audience listening out there,
Yeah,
it really, really does. One of the most powerful practices I ever integrated into my life was something called morning pages. I don't know if it's pretty popular
love it. Yep.
process. Yeah. So basically you wake up and I mean, you pee if you have to pee or whatever, but basically, you don't get on your phone, you don't interact with anyone. The first thing you do is you grab your journal, you grab your pen, and you just start writing. And you do not stop. You don't take the pen off of the paper until I think you complete, like, I do 3 pages. I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what morning pages, like in the book, what they recommend, but I usually do 3 pages. And it's stream of consciousness writing. So you just
Love
keep
it.
writing and you write whatever comes through to you. And sometimes you're like literally writing, I don't have anything to write. I don't have anything to write. I don't have anything to write. And then something
Yeah.
else comes through. And it's a really powerful practice because stuff just comes out that you didn't know was there. Um, and I can't tell you how many times I'm like, holy cow, whoa, okay. Didn't know that was there and impacting me, but now that I do,
Now I can.
awareness is the key to everything. Now that I'm aware, I can decide what I want to do with that.
Yeah.
So I love that. And then there was a second part, which Perimenopause and the memory issues, or it's a real deal. What was the second thing you
I
talked about? You said
uh
you were talking about a stream of conscious. You were talking about subconscious thoughts, then
yeah.
becoming a witness to them, and then changing your behavior based on them. I
Hmm.
don't know. I was going to respond to something else you said, but now it's gone.
All right. It was just meant to
Yeah,
be what it was meant to be.
that's right. That's right. It
Yeah.
was meant to be. Oh, you know what I was going to say is coming back to me now. So I have a daughter who has like very significant mental and physical health struggles,
Okay.
and we've been, dealing with that for like 4 years now.
Okay.
And we've had some progress, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
And of course, as a parent, that's really hard to deal with.
Yeah.
And you want to fix it, right? As your mom, as the mom, you just literally want to fix it. And you almost feel like it is your job. Like, this is my job as her mother, is to fix this, right?
Yeah.
And I was catching myself in that mantra that it's my job to fix it.
Mm,
And that was very detrimental to my mental health and to my ability to get her
the support
the
she needs.
supports she needed.
Yeah.
And so it was really huge. That's just one example. It was really huge when I realized, like, I'm coming at this from this angle of like, it is my job. I have to do it. And if I don't do it, I'm not a good mom.
Yeah. Who am I?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
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 So these things really run our lives when we're not aware of them.
They do. They do. And coming from a kid, like my experience and only I've had a few conversations with my mom as far as what she experienced during the time that like I was going through a lot of my hard stuff and going through just all sorts of, as we talked about, just a lot of physical health things.
Hmm.
It there's a part of it that is like the journey that the kid needs to go on.
Hmm.
Like I wouldn't be here today speaking
Right.
and doing what I do and helping people the way that I do if I had not gone through those things.
Yeah.
And that was actually even something I got reflected back to me again with
Right.
my kiddo because I was, wanting to like just have this just experience of birth and having her come in the way that I really wanted her to get on to come
Yeah.
earthside, and
Yeah.
um because I know that C-sections can have some impact on their gut and their microbiome, all the
Yeah.
things. And
Right.
it was just beautiful just because my one of my coaches was like, well, what if this was just the way that she needed to come
Yeah.
into the world and this will be something that will it could or could not. I'm not going to
Hmm.
project anything, but what if this is just something that is her way
Her
of what
journey,
she
part
needed
of
to
her
get
journey.
here in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And that kind of brought it a little bit full circle to me in that sense of like, yep, you're right. It could be that this
Yeah.
was how she was meant to be here, and who knows what will come from that. But it's
Hmm.
important that we also like remember too that it's also their experience as well,
Hmm.
as hard
Hmm.
as it is for us. And this is where we pour so much into our kids, right? As far as like we want them to be better. We want to get them the support. But like also what about our experience of it too?
Yeah.
We also are experiencing something through that. And so
Hmm.
and kids will mirror all of our stuff back to us.
Yes.
So
Oh,
things that we
yes.
have not worked on or fully like
Yes.
learned from, like they will show
They're
it to us.
giant mirrors. Yeah.
So also at the same time, like how can we take some of those resources and help and work with ourselves through those times as well. I think there's so many parenting courses for how can I better, talk to my kids? How can I listen to my kids? How can I better help my and support my kids? But like, what about us? What about
Yeah.
our experience as a mom? That was the missing gap that I saw. And I was like, well, I'm gonna fill that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
make resources for moms for that because we also deserve to be supported through these times as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I've experienced in motherhood, and I always say, like, if I've experienced it, I'm not the only one. I can't be
Oh,
the
for
only one,
sure. Yes.
is that not only do we have our own experience of motherhood in motherhood that is growing us and stretching us and changing us, but if we're open and we're aware, we start realizing all this like childhood stuff from our own childhood starts roaring its head, right? Like you didn't even think it was there. You didn't even know it existed. You didn't even think it was a problem at the time, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, like this situation that's going on with my child
Yeah.
is bringing up for me stuff that was really buried from my own childhood and making me feel all kinds of feelings that I now have to wrap my brain around and work out. And there's a lot of forgiveness that has to happen. And there's just so much there. This experience is so profound.
Hmm.
But that inner child part is something
Hmm.
we also don't talk a lot about in the motherhood space.
Yep. Yep. Oh gosh, how we could have a whole podcast around inner child and inner child work.
Yes.
But yeah, for anyone who's just listening and maybe this is a newer thing or a newer topic or subject to talk about, there's learning. I talk about this in the way of like learning how to meet our own needs
Mm-hmm.
and also healing that inner child, that little girl that's all in, that's all, it's us. There are
Yeah.
many versions of us, but we are
Yeah.
all of those versions.
Mm-hmm.
We can go back and get that inner child what
Yeah.
she needed to have during that time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and whether it's forgiveness, whether it's love, whether it's knowing that she is worthy, that she's enough, that she
Mm-hmm.
matters, that she's
Yeah.
connected, that she deserves to be heard and
Yeah.
deserves to be listened to use her voice. All of those things are needs that we need to have met.
Yeah.
And sometimes they just don't get met, or
Mm-hmm.
they're met by our parents, but then we have all sorts of other people that we interact with
Right.
in our external world that can influence
Yeah.
those needs being met. So,
Mm-hmm.
as adults, what can show up as expecting other people or our kids to meet our needs, like I'm only happy if my kids are happy, or
Mm-hmm.
giving up on our own needs, which just leads to a load of disappointment.
Mm-hmm.
If we can shift to meeting our own needs and healing that inner child and getting her what she needed, knowing that now I can meet those needs myself, the experience we have in life is far different than expecting other people or
Yeah.
areas to do it for us.
Yeah, because no one and nothing could ever do it.
No.
It's pouring into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. Like you're
Yeah.
never going to fill that bucket.
Right.
You can only ever fill your own bucket.
Right.
And that does take some work, like we're saying, because I think a lot of parents go into parenthood recognizing there's certain things that their parents did that they felt wasn't right or felt could be
Oh
done
yeah.
better or whatever the case may be. And so they make a conscious decision, like with my parents did this, but with my child I'm going to do it this way. Which there's nothing wrong with that, and I
Mhm.
have done that in my own
Yeah.
parenthood journey. But there's a reason why you're saying that, right? There's a reason why there's some inner child work that needs to be done. If you're saying that, and I'm pretty sure every single parent on the planet has said that about some aspect of parenting, there is some inner child work that needs to be done around that. And just because you make that decision and you think it's the right one or a better one than what your parents did doesn't mean your child's going to think that, right? So they're having their own experience, just like you said. We're having our experience and they're having their experience, and they're not the same experience.
Yeah.
And so it's the gray of parenthood. I always say that, like
Mm.
it's just all gray, like
Yeah.
there. And gray is like the change we talked about. It can be
Yep.
very uncomfortable.
Yep.
Yeah.
I say that it's in the gray that we can find a whole lot of love,
Yeah.
a whole
Yeah.
lot of
A lot of
love.
compassion,
Hmm.
understanding.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I speak a lot to like the all or nothing. Like we've got to be either all in all of the time. It's like we got to be just so perfect. It's got to be exactly this way or not at all. But it's
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of that gray area, which is where parenthood literally is.
Yes. Yes.
Is where we find the love for ourselves. It's where we transform our relationship with ourselves. That's where we
Yeah.
find love and connection with others and just so much more flexibility and adaptability that is essential inside of
Yes.
motherhood. And I just love
Yes.
all of
Yeah.
them.
And that's where I feel like community is so important, because
Yeah.
it is all in the gray and it is not
Yeah.
black and white. And it is so wonderful to have a community of moms to be like, hey guys, like this is what's going on. What do you think about this? And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that their answer is right or wrong. Again, it's all in the gray, but you can at least hear their experience and their perspective. You can integrate it into your thoughts. And then, I do a lot of intuition work. So then you can move from your
I
intuition.
was just gonna say that.
Yeah. I'm a huge intuition girl.
Yeah.
And that's a practice also, which we could spend a whole, we could spend a whole
Yeah.
hour talking about. But that community is amazing because first of all, it tells you you're not alone, right? You're in this struggle, but we're all in the struggle. We're all in the gray. We're all learning. We're all growing. Like it's okay, right? I give you permission to be in the gray.
Yep.
And we love you anyway, and you're doing a great job. And these are the things that you can think about, take it or leave it.
Yes, yes. Let's take that pressure, that perfectionism off. Like I'm all here for that.
Yes. Yes. I interviewed a woman. Her podcast is called The Unperfected Pod. And it's
Oh,
literally about that's her whole focus is helping moms to unperfect their life because
I love it.
that's how we can be happy and joyful and on
Yeah.
purpose and in alignment is when we are unperfected versus trying to be perfect. All
Mhm.
right. I want to be mindful of our time. I have one last question for you. So these women come in and they're struggling with a health issue, but we're working with mind, body, soul.
Yep.
But this work that we're talking about, whether it be journaling or meditation or just reflection or whatever it is, takes some time. And moms are very busy and often resistant to taking the time for themselves.
Yep.
So, how do we get past that as moms?
Okay. I'm going to give a couple of different suggestions.
Okay.
Number one would be actually looking at that itself. Like, I don't have time for me. That's a number one belief right there to look at for anyone who's
Mhm.
like, I don't have time. Just explore that a little bit more. Let's
Yeah.
journal a little bit more about like, I don't have time for me. Is it that we're not feeling worthy, that
Mhm.
we deserve to have time for ourselves? All of the above. You can just kind of explore that a little bit more. On the second side, there are a lot of expectations that we put on ourselves of how we need to show up in our household, how we contribute to the household,
Mhm.
that mm, are worth looking into a little bit more and
Mhm.
exploring that side a little bit more of, do I have to actually be the one who does all the things?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Explore it a little bit more.
Right.
Every family's different, but
Yeah.
what could it look like if there was a little more support?
Mhm.
Explore that a little bit further. And then the third thing I would say is, and this is the one that I like exercise all of the time, is,
Mhm.
are there things that are on my to-do list that I actually do not need to do?
Mhm.
Whether that is, and this is from a mental standpoint too, of like, if I find myself having a lot of resistance around doing something, let's say like calling the insurance company, is it possible that my husband could do it?
Right.
Is
Yes.
it possible that I could maybe ask a friend to bring some dinners over?
Yeah.
Just because
Mhm.
I don't actually have an emergency, but like, what would it look like to set up a support
Right.
system with my friends of like, hey, I could just really use someone bringing some dinners over.
Yeah.
That would be so helpful for me. And then look at all of that time that just opened up. Or,
Right.
you know,
Right.
we don't have to sacrifice sleep in order to spend time for ourselves. What would
Mhm.
it look like to join a community, to join a support group, to hire to hire a coach, to have someone there that in that hour it is entirely for you?
Yeah.
What would it look like to have some exercises, some journaling exercises to do, that while you're waiting in the car for your kiddos, you could be listening to podcasts like this one.
Mhm.
Great opportunities to be able to listen and say, oh, that was a huge perspective shift for me. Like, oh, that's me. Okay, well,
Right.
now we have awareness. Look at that already. In an hour,
Yeah.
we've already brought awareness to something that we can now do something with if we choose to.
Right.
So those are like what I would say is, I think a lot of women have more time than they think. It just might take a perspective shift of just
Yeah.
realizing that, like, even in the car when you're going somewhere and you're listening to a podcast, that's time for you that you
Yeah.
can take.
Mhm.
So,
Or when you're folding the laundry or walking
or
the
when you're full,
dog,
exactly
right?
all of the above, right? There's
Three
so
stones,
many.
what do they call it? Kill two birds with one stone. Like you
Yep.
walk the dog, you got exercise, and you got enlightened all in an hour.
All in an
Ah,
sure. Exactly. So I don't think it has to be as hard as we tend to make it, which again, that's
Yes.
also another belief too of like, do we have to struggle? Does it have to be hard? Where can we just shift something to maybe see a little bit more ease? Can we create a little
Yes.
more flow in that? So again,
Yeah.
as this podcast has been full of all sorts of different things for people to take a look at. But yeah, I
Right.
think I get it. I have a 5-month-old, so like,
Yes.
and I run a business. So
Yes.
time is like something that oftentimes feels like it eludes me.
Yes.
However, as we mentioned, there's so many different ways that we can actually gain back more time. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's even in embracing the no of saying like,
Yes.
hey, you know what? No, I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
This would be more helpful for me right now.
Yeah.
The no's are actually how we buy back more time.
Yes, absolutely. I have my clients do a little exercise where I have them like write down everything you do every day or most days.
Yep.
Okay, now write down what could be farmed out to somebody else, whether it be your kids if they're older or a
Yep.
partner or whatever. Write down what you really need to take care of, like circle the things that like this is kind of really my job to take care of this. Now, how about you scratch out the things that if you didn't do, the family wouldn't fall apart, the house wouldn't fall apart, like, and probably no one would notice, right? No one would
Yeah.
even notice in your family that it didn't get done.
Yep.
Those are your like low hanging fruit. Like
Yep.
say goodbye to those. That's a mental construct. And I think that, like you said, that mindset piece and maybe journaling and questioning about, why do I think I don't have enough time and that I'm not worthy of putting time into myself. That's,
Yep.
I think, the biggest piece. And if we can get people past that, then the space opens up. Magically, the space somehow opens up. And when you take that time to do those things, you move from flow. And so then everything happens more easily and faster and
Mhm.
easier and all of that.
That's a great point. I just want to highlight that too, though, of when we do create that space, also create the intentions of what you like, frame it out, set the tone for where you want to go, because that space that you just created can get filled just as quickly as you created it.
Yes, a
So,
hundred
so,
percent. Yeah.
so find whether it's the
Yes.
discipline or whatever you need, maybe it's a
Yes.
schedule on the calendar, like make sure you actually set the
Yeah.
intention, even if it's 10 minutes, that like that is your 10 minutes, and treat it as if it's anything else that you do on your calendar. It is
Yeah.
like sacred time, as you mentioned at the beginning. It's that sacred time for you, and
Hmm.
hold it as sacred time, because
Yeah.
when you say that that's what's important to you, guess what happens? Like your body, your brain says, oh, I'm important too.
Yeah.
And then now that starts to shift. It actually
Yes.
says, no longer am I going to be rolling over myself to meet everybody else's needs. And
Yeah.
now I'm going to take that time and hold that as time for me, even if it's like 10 minutes of just like sitting in
Yeah.
silence, of just like,
Yes.
oh, beautiful
Uh,
time,
Beautiful. It's a beautiful time.
whatever it is.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
really what you're doing is you are creating a contract with yourself or a
Yes.
relationship with yourself when you're saying that. You wouldn't put
Mhm.
something on the calendar to meet a friend for coffee and then just flake on your friend and not show
Right.
up. Like there'd have to be something really big happening for you to say, I can't make it.
Yeah.
So our relationship with ourselves is just as important, more important than our relationship with even our closest friends and family. So yeah, putting that on the calendar and acting like it is a relationship with yourself that you are tending to. You're watering that garden and letting it grow.
Mm,
Yeah,
love it.
love
What
it.
a great way
Oh,
to kind of round this out.
yes. Thank you so much for being here. As I always say, like every single guest, I'm like, I could talk to you for 3 more hours.
I
Like,
know.
and there's
It's great
so
though.
much that we could cover. But thank you so much for everything we did cover and for the work that you're doing. And I will make sure to put in the show notes all of your contact information so that people can reach out to you, follow you on social media, work with you, all the things. Okay.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure being here, truly.
Oh, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much. Bye bye. So we covered a lot of ground in that conversation, and we actually even touched on some topics that I have episodes around, like grief and the different ways that grief shows up in our life that we may not recognize, and matrescence. I have a whole episode on matrescence. So if those two topics are of interest to you and you'd like to learn more about them, then check those episodes out. But we covered a lot of topics, but really, I think the main theme of the conversation is that we are not a mind, we are not a body, we are not just a soul, right? We are a soul that has a mind and a body, and one thing cannot be peeled apart from another. And when we try to do that and treat symptoms in isolation, we're really ignoring a big part of the picture. So I hope that you heard a few little tidbits that were helpful to you, a few little exercises that we mentioned that could start helping you to move toward a path of more cohesiveness, right? Where mind, body, and soul are cohesive and one unit and operating efficiently as one unit. One of the exercises that we mentioned, and I'll offer this to you as your mindful moment invitation for the week, was morning pages. Morning pages have been really instrumental in my process. And that's, in case you don't remember, it's when you wake up in the morning. You're pretty much first thing out of sleep. You can get up and go to the bathroom so that you're comfortable, but you try not to interact too much with people or pick up your phone and start scrolling. And you just commit to writing 3 pages in a journal nonstop. And that means nonstop means that even if you run out of things to say and you're like, I don't have anything left, I don't think I have anything left to write, then you write that. You write, I don't have anything left, or I don't have anything to say. You just keep writing until you fill those 3 pages. And it's amazing how you can think that you don't have anything left, but after a few times of writing that, something else pops up, something else comes up. And it's a really powerful tool for self-reflection and starting to become aware of what's happening in your subconscious and your limiting beliefs and just what's going on underneath the surface. It's a very powerful tool. So I invite you to give that a shot this week. And as always, I will give you a few extra bonus mindfulness exercises in the newsletter. If you haven't already signed up to get my Discover Your Dharma workbook, I highly encourage you to do that. I think for me and for many people, when we feel like we are not living our life's purpose, it is really painful, and it's again this mind body connection. It causes actual physical symptoms. You might feel like you're just always tired all the time. Life just feels kind of like blah and numb, and like it's lost all of its magic. You feel like you're adrift, right? You're just kind of drifting in the wind, and like life is pulling you from direction to direction without any control on your part. You can feel mildly depressed. You can feel purposeless. You can feel off balance. There's so many feelings that come along with not knowing what your soul was sent here to do. And I don't necessarily mean that in a job, a way of a job or a career. It could be that. But it could be many things. It could be volunteering in a way, with a organization or in a setting that you're super passionate about. It could be learning how to paint or ride horses. It could be really anything that lights your soul on fire, that makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning, and that serves your soul and by extension serves the world. So if you feel like you've been a little adrift, not really sure why you're here or what this life is really all about and what your purpose is, download my workbook. You can get it off my website. You can get it off the show notes of this show under the Linktree link. And just take some time. It's 5 paths to your Dharma. So I give you 5 different areas to explore, and then 5 different exercises, one for each area. Take a weekend to do it once a week, and take 5 weeks to do it. Like, you can do it in any way you want, any way that fits into your schedule. But just take some time, give yourself the gift of that time of self exploration. It's the first step. That awareness is the first step of unifying mind, body, and soul. All right, guys, have a wonderful week. Look forward to my email related to this show, my newsletter, and I will see you next week. Bye. Hi, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our other episodes, I ask that you please like the show, follow, subscribe, or share. The way that podcasts work is the more people that do one of those things, the more likely it is that when someone's looking for a podcast to listen to, our show will pop up for them. I started this podcast because I really see there's a great need in our world for people to feel more peace, joy, love, and acceptance in their lives. And I think we can do that when we have a greater sense of self-awareness. We could become conscious creators of our own lives. And I'm seeking to do that for as many people as possible. So if you could help me by liking, sharing, or subscribing to the show, I'd really appreciate it. And hopefully someone hears a conversation that changes their life. Thank you again, and I'll see you next time. Much love.